Here are 5 things you need to know if you want to retire. So we're going to go over 5 tips today that you should know, figure out before you want to retire. We're going to get into that, but first I want to bring up this article that Fidelity came out with last August of 2021. And we'll bring up the article here. You could look at it. And hey, we like Fidelity. I think they're a great investment company, but I don't think they're really known for planning and for retirement planning, because in the article it states, these guidelines you should have saved for retirement to have enough money for retirement. And we get down to, the final number there. It says by the time you're 67 years old, you should have 10 times your last year's earnings saved for retirement. And so when you look at it, well, maybe you made $100,000, that last year, that says you should have 10 times that, which is $1 million. Or maybe you're married and, combined you made 150 or 200,000 combined. Well, now you're looking at $1.5 to $2 million saved for retirement. First of all, that's not planning. That is just giving some guidelines. And I think too many people take stock into that, and they come into our office. We hear it all the time, says, I don't have enough money saved for retirement. I'm falling short. I don't have $1 million. I don't have $2 million or whatever that might be. And sometimes people have like a third of what they say you should have in this article, and they have enough to retire. It's because it's about having a retirement plan. And so I'm not a big fan of this article, and it's not retirement planning. You might have a lot of retirement accounts. You might have a bunch of IRAs or 401ks, 403bs, and so on. Just because you have retirement accounts doesn't mean you have a retirement plan. And that's what it really comes down to, is knowing everything and pulling it all together to find out what do you really need. I have people who've retired with $300,000 that don't expect to run out of money because they have a plan and they have other forms of income coming in. So let's look into those features. And one other thing about this article actually is most people don't want to retire at 67 anyways. I mean, there are people, but most people want to retire by full retirement age, which might be in this, 66 or 66 odd months, or Medicare age, which is age 65. Or a lot of people want to retire sooner, 60, 62. But if that's the case, you have to do some specific planning to make sure that you're going to have enough. And we have to tackle those things like healthcare, which we'll get into. Let's start with the first tip, which is know your numbers when it comes to your expenses. I think it's important to do a budget worksheet, and that's really the foundation and the starting point when it comes to doing a plan and doing your finances. You really have to understand how much money you're spending, and I think most people don't have a good grasp of that anymore because you've been making good money and you don't have to be tight on your budget. And we see a lot of people in my office saying their budget is maybe $4,000 or $5,000 a month. And I'll ask him, I said, what is your net pay? And I'll ask the wife, I said, what is your net pay? And we add those together, and maybe their net pay is like $9,000 a month after taxes are withheld, what they take home. And they told me their budget was $5,000 a month. So I said, you're saving $4,000 a month. I said, no, we're barely saving anything. Maybe a couple $100 here and there, but no, we're pretty much break even. I said, then $5,000 is not your budget. You're obviously spending a lot more. So we had to get really detailed with that budget. So getting a budget worksheet and writing down everything that you spend, because you have to understand in retirement, most people don't keep that same income level in retirement. You're going to have to cut back. Most people do have to cut back a little bit on the budget. You just can't freely spend here and there as you need it. You're going to be living on a specific budget. So know your expenses for sure. All right, tip number 2 is know what your income is, your residual income. So specifically talking about Social Security. So you need to understand what your Social Security benefit is. You have to go to the website and create a login and password, get your statement, and not just say, I'm just going to take it, but work with somebody who understands Social Security to find out what is the best strategy actually for your household. There's so many different strategies still around today that people just don't understand. Maybe you were widowed, or maybe you're divorced, or maybe one of you in the household didn't work at all. You're still entitled to Social Security on one of our previous episodes. Or maybe one hardly worked, but you qualify for Social Security. You're going to get half of your spouse's benefit. So there's things that you need to understand when it comes to Social Security and find out what is the best strategy to take it. And it's also health related too. So you don't delay Social Security to the maximum if you have some severe health issues, for sure. You don't do that. But also pensions. Obviously, pensions are a dying breed out there. I ask people in a lot of my educational seminars who has a pension. Usually it's a quarter to a third of the room. But then I said, how many of your children have a pension? And it's usually I get one hand maybe in the room of 30, 40 people. So not many people are having pensions, and it's going to be less and less. But you have to also find out, work with somebody who understands, is it the best thing to take the pension payment, or is it best to take the lump sum if they give you that option? Now, if you're with the federal government or state government, they don't give you that lump sum option. But if it's a private pension, you can definitely take that lump sum and put it into a traditional IRA. And what we're finding out is if you're going to even just be conservative and just make a 4.5% return on that money, it's going to outperform that pension. So you have to really understand those numbers. So these are all working together. Let's go to number 3. Investments. So hopefully you've been saving through the years, and that's the whole point of saving in your 401ks and IRAs and so on, is to now get to a point where now you can use that money to supplement your Social Security and pension if you have that. It's designed for retirement income. Again, retirement savings are not designed for buying cars and buying houses and things like that, paying off your house. We talked about that in a previous episode. You want to make sure that you're using that 401k IRA monies to complement your retirement. So find out how much money you have saved. You have to figure out what you need to be investing as well, because maybe you were aggressive in your working years. Can you afford that risk in retirement? Because what if we have another coronavirus 2.0 where the market took a big hit, or a real estate bubble where the market lost 50+%? That was also many years ago, but what if it duplicated itself? Most people can't afford to take a 30 to 40% hit in their portfolio in retirement, or really close to it, because that'll shorten the life of your money. And also, so you need to lower the risk. A lot of people do, but also know how much can you take out of those accounts where you're not running out of money. That's a big concern for retirees. One of the biggest fears is running out of money before you run out of life. And so you want to make sure you're taking the appropriate amount out and not being too aggressive with those withdrawals. And it has to be part of that plan. Let's go to number 4 is tax brackets. And we had other episodes about understanding, the taxes as well with retirement, but that's important as well. Are you going to stay in the same state as you are today? Because making a shift in retirement to a different state could save you a lot of money in taxes, and sometimes that gives you the ability to have your retirement solvent where you don't run out of money. And some people, if you stay in the same state, you will run out. I had this situation with a recent client who came in the office. If they don't move, they will run out of money. We had to show them that option. That was the original plan, and now they're talking about not moving, and unfortunately it was going to drop their life of their money till about 86 years old, and they might be alive for another 5 to 10 years. And so that's a big deal. We want to make sure that you have enough money in retirement. So understanding the tax brackets where you're living, but also understanding the taxable part of retirement when you're taking withdrawals out. You have to pay taxes on these accounts that you've never paid taxes on. And so that's part of it. And also implementing maybe Roth conversions that can help your money grow tax-free in retirement. You can still do Roth conversions without income. Remember, contributions, you need income to put into a Roth, but if you convert an IRA or 401k to a Roth, you don't need income. You can convert at any amount you want, and there's no limits on that. So understand the brackets you're in. And the last thing is healthcare. And that might kind of be the biggest one, because the cost of healthcare is so expensive if you do not retire at 65 or later. So if you're trying to retire before 65, how are you going to cover that healthcare? A lot of people say, I'm retiring at 62, I don't care. I said, what are you doing for healthcare? We'll figure it out. Well, figuring it out sometimes could cost you $1,000, $1,500 a month of healthcare, which is crazy when you look at what was your first house payment. And now what we're paying for healthcare is outrageous. So, you can pick up COBRA from your previous employer. If you're quitting, you can cover that for 18 months, but that's very expensive. So that's one option. The Affordable Care Act is another option, but you have to keep your income within a certain limit to make it a reasonable cost for healthcare. If you go over that limit, you have to pay a lot of those subsidies back, and that can be very expensive. So you want to make sure, if you're going to be on Affordable Care Act for health care, that you're going to be very tight with your numbers, and you need to have a budget for sure, and make sure you're going to live within that limit. So you need to have that retirement plan. Otherwise, you get till, you might work for the federal government, and if you had enough years into the government, you actually get health care. So I know with the federal government, you can retire with health care benefits at 60 for sure, and you can get health care from 60 on if you have enough years in, or 62 is the full retirement age for them, and you had to just be 5 years at the federal government, and you can retire at age 62, and you can keep their health care plan. So, which is a nice benefit, which most people don't get that. Otherwise, you can just pay a lot of money out of pocket. There's a lot of things to consider, but you have to get these things figured out. And the key is working with somebody that can actually pull all these together into a plan. It's hard to do it by yourself when you're working and you're trying to do it all yourself. And I know there's a lot of intelligent people out there who are good with numbers and spreadsheets, but they don't think about the plan. And also when you're doing the planning, you have to factor in inflation. As we've seen this last year plus, if you need $5-7 grand a month when you figure out your budget, what is that going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years? You want to make sure that you have enough money that's going to keep up with inflation as well, because as we know, Social Security does not keep up with inflation. We had a good increase, yes, but over time it's averaged about 2%. And we know inflation is averaging a lot higher than 2%. So put these things together, find somebody to work with. If you're in the area, we would love to work with you as well. We can show you how to get a retirement plan put together. But the key is these are what you need to know, minimum, before you should retire. Article here of Transamerica came out with says, of retirees, people who are already retired, only 18% of retirees have a written plan. That's less than 1 out of 5 people have a written plan for retirement. It should be 100%. You should have a plan before you pull the plug. Before you're positive that you're done, make sure you work with somebody and have a written plan to show this is exactly what things are going to look like for you in retirement. So thanks for subscribing. Thanks for listening and watching this video here. Please click that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next week.